Can anybody remember the last time $4 billion was invested on the Sunshine Coast in a development? No? Well, that's good. I'm glad no one said yes, because it's never happened before. So to put it in context, if you look at Queen's Wharf in Brisbane, I mean, Brisbane crowed about that, about how fantastic it was and how big it was. That development was $3.6 billion. So what we are building in the Maroochydore City Centre is more significant than what they've built at Queen's Wharf. Queen's Wharf, when it is completed and fully up and running, will employ 8,000 people, mostly in tourism, hospitality and gambling. We will employ 20,000 people in the Maroochydore City Centre, and we will employ those people in knowledge industries, health and professional services. So I think we are on the cusp of an absolutely enormous opportunity here on the Sunshine Coast. And I think Mayor Frank's comments earlier about the biospheres are really critical, because the other thing is that we have a culture on the Sunshine Coast where we care a lot about the environment. So we are going to have people who are going to think about development, who are going to think about the sort of work that we are doing in a more sustainable way. What I really want to talk about though today is about the data opportunities that we have in the Maroochydore City Centre. So as I mentioned, we've got health services there. We're building the Maroochydore Private Hospital. The University of the Sunshine Coast has taken 2 floors of that hospital, and they will be doing clinical testing there. Does anybody remember that story about Elizabeth Holmes? She was the lady who scammed all that money, and she told everybody she could do those really fancy health assessments with just the prick of a finger. The speed of the data that is available on the Sunshine Coast and in the Maroochydore City Centre, and the sorts of testing that the university will do, I suspect is going to make the sort of things Elizabeth told everybody that she could do a reality right here on the Sunshine Coast. And I think one of the really interesting things, and we have, Councillor Terry talked about the data cable, the undersea cable, and he also talked about the investment that Google is making. Now, NextDC has a very small data centre there. It's on Maud Street. I don't know if you've driven past and seen it. And they also have purchased a block within the Maroochydore City Centre to develop their Stage 2 data centre. Now, their original plans for that data centre were to commence construction in 2028. And something's happened in the last 6 months, because they've pushed us to hurry us along, and they now have a desire to commence construction of that data centre in the middle of this year. That's a 3.5-year acceleration. If anyone's ever built a house and said, hey, listen, I'd like to accelerate it by 3.5 years, you will understand how difficult that is. And so something big is about to happen here on the Sunshine Coast. So the reason I want to really focus on data is because there are 9 undersea cables that come in on the eastern seaboard outside of Maroochydore, and all 9 of those come into Sydney. And then the only other place that there is an undersea cable is here on the Sunshine Coast at Maroochydore, and we will have a second one when Google comes along. Now, data and the speed of data and the security of data are going to become increasingly significant. And if I could urge anybody in this room, all of you are educators, if I could urge you to do anything, I would say every single student that you send out into the world must be AI literate. Because AI, every single profession in the future is going to need some understanding of AI and how to use it. A lot of the professional services that we are already seeing in the city centre are taking advantage of the high-speed data that is available there. They are using AI to look at trends. You know, they are... Do you know what? There's professional services companies in the Maroochydore City Centre who are buying data on your credit card usage. It doesn't have your name on it, which is fortunate, because then my husband would know how many pairs of shoes that I bought. But it does give trends. It does tell you where people are spending money and where they're investing. And I think without exception, every single sector are going to need people who have AI literacy for the future.
Thanks, Amanda, and obviously touched on one of my questions, which was what are those skills? So AI is definitely one of them. I know that you're not always able to share, and we've spoken about NextDC, we spoke about Google, but it'd be really great to understand who are the people coming to the CBD? How is it going to change over the next 2, 3, 5 years?
So we've got 2 quite large buildings under construction in the CBD at the moment. They're both in excess of 10,000 square metres. The last time a building of 10,000 square metres or more was built on the Sunshine Coast was in 2017, and that was Kentucky. So it's been a long time since we've had commercial office construction occurring on the Sunshine Coast, and there's a real shortage. We are out there talking to an enormous variety of different organisations. A lot of them are knowledge-based industries, given the sort of investment we're talking about. So $4 to $6 billion will be invested in the Maroochydore City Centre. An additional somewhere between $10 and $20 billion will be invested in the intergenerational public transport that's going to connect the Sunshine Coast. We've got planning provision in the Maroochydore City Centre for a premium hotel, the first premium hotel that will occur on the Sunshine Coast when that investment happens. And Councillor Terry also talked earlier about the fact that we are a partner city in 2032 and the Athletes Village will be built in the Maroochydore City Centre. So I think the sorts of organisations that we're seeing at the moment are mostly professional service people, because we are going to need lots of planners, lots of engineers, lots of people with those technical skills who can support the development and the delivery of that infrastructure. And we're also seeing some really interesting new industries. E-commerce has expressed a lot of interest in being in the Maroochydore City Centre, and lots of innovation, and particularly innovation in manufacturing is something that has that some of those industries have shown some real interest. At this point in time, we haven't got a completed building for them to move into. That won't be until towards the end of this calendar year when we can start really announcing who those companies are.